Buenas noches, gente. ¿Cómo les va a este episodio número 40 de Protagonistas del Cómic? Un episodio muy especial porque celebramos los 40 programas de protagonistas del cómic. Este programa que ustedes saben que está dedicado a las entrevistas de creadores del cómic. Voy a presentar a mi compañero, el señor Mario Luzuriaga.
¿Cómo le va, mi amigo? 40 programas ya, qué hermoso todo esto que hemos transitado juntos, ¿no? Qué hermoso.
Una locura, 40 programas, 40 invitados.
40 invitados.
Y hoy no es la excepción, hoy tenemos invitados.
Qué nenes tenemos, ¿eh? Qué nenes tenemos hoy, ¿no?
Sí. Hoy tenemos un gran invitado, así que ahora vamos a empezar a hablar como siempre en inglés para que ustedes después, acá, ahí arriba, les voy a dejar el link para que ustedes sepan cómo poner los subtítulos y ver la entrevista subtitulada en inglés desde el celular, inclusive desde la computadora. Pero bueno, vamos a hablar en inglés. I'm going to introduce our guest. He's one of the greatest artists you ever met. Recently, he worked on Berserker, a comic book written by Keanu Reeves and Matt Kind. It was published here by Planeta Comic. So, the one and only Mr. Ron Garney. Cheers!
What's up, gentlemen?
How you doing, Mr. Garney?
Interview that way.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I heard you saying you have to do it in English.
Yes.
You have to do the
actually,
people understand English to some degree.
Yeah, here some people understand English, but most people watch the interviews with subtitles.
Yes,
so
later.
After we finish the interview, I subtitle the interview in order to more people can enjoy this honor to hear you speak about your career, for example.
Yes.
So,
buenas noches, gente. Does that sound right? Did that sound like a good?
Yes, sir.
I've got to see if I can talk like you guys.
Hola.
Franca, pero su cómic no puedo ser más violento. How'd that sound? No?
Pretty good.
All right, one more. Este programa es un elixir para rascar las profundidades del cómic y su creación.
Y su creación. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what I say?
I'm ready.
There's the comment you read when someone say elixir is because it's something amazing, something so beautiful that you gotta actually taste it,
tasteful.
enjoy it.
Tasteful, like a good scotch.
Elixir. Yeah,
elixir.
Exactly.
What that was.
Because a coach, an Argentinian coach called Coco Basile, says always it's an elixir. When something is very, very good, this is an elixir.
While he tastes a Blue Label.
The Blue Label, yes, right.
Johnny Walker Blue Label.
Right.
This is an elixir.
Gotcha.
Yes, this is an elixir, and this is tasteful. Not to drink, just to taste.
Love potion number 9.
Oh, really?
Habla mejor yo el español en grande. That means it was good.
Yeah.
Grande. Hey, come here, give me a big hug.
People are amazed that you speak very well.
Oh, really? Is that what they're saying?
That's what they're saying.
Always
and
I'm saying
also-
the right things.
And also, if you came here if you come to Argentina, they will treat you like
I'll
a
have
king.
to brush up. I took Spanish for 4 years or something back in high school, and then but if you don't use it, you don't. I took French for 4 years too, and I can read some stuff, but to hear people, it just sounds like blah, 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 to me. But I can read it somewhat. So,
Did you read something about a comic book from our country, from Argentina, or did you hear something about that?
no. What do you mean about what?
I don't know.
Any comic book.
Any comic book.
Not really. We printed Berserker in Spanish, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's about the extent of it.
So, Mr. Garney, tell us about your beginnings in your career. How
Mr.
you
Garney,
get in?
tell us about your beginnings, Mr. Garney.
Yeah, your beginnings.
You know, we are here. We are also we are sons from immigrants, like from Italy, from Spain,
Right.
from France. So
You
so
know,
we
Mr. Garney, you make me feel
Italian.
like you make me feel like Gorlami in
Gorlami, yeah, right.
Gorlami.
Gorlami. Yeah, Gorlami.
Non
I
Travolta.
love that scene. He's like, again, say it again. Gorlami. And Brad Pitt, he couldn't rid himself of that, Southern accent from the South here. But what was your question?
Your beginnings in how you got into comics.
Well, let's see. My mother was somewhere and she met my father. And then I was born. That's
Your beginnings.
I began.
And we
I
with the comic
swam up and got into the ovum, and here I am. So a little adult humor there. Let's see. I mean, I read comics when I was a kid, obviously, like most of us. And but then I forgot about them. By the time I got to high school, I was playing sports. I was into girls and music, and the comics sort of became a thing of the past, more my childhood. And then I was out of college. I was working nightclubs. I was a manager of a nightclub. And then I was bartending at a restaurant, and I was a bouncer at one point. And but anyways, I was bartending at a restaurant, and the other bartender happened to have a comic book. And it was a Secret Wars comic book that Mike Zeck drew.
Yeah.
Back in the mid 80s, like 84, 85.
84, 85, yes.
Yeah. And I picked it up and I was looking at it. I'm like, oh, I remember these, And then I went to school for illustration and psychology. And I was out of school and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, with that. And then I looked at the comic book, and I had always entertained myself with the thought of maybe doing movies, getting into movies. And when I started reading the comic book, this was all there. It was the storytelling was there. It was like looking at camera angles, and it was like watching a little movie, basically. So I instantly got really interested and kind of hooked on it. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. I forgot all about comic books, and I didn't know how to get involved in it or anything. But the other bartender told me he got the comic at a little 24-hour store down the street. So I went down there and I just sat there for like 2 hours going through all the comics and, opening them. And I bought a bunch, and it was weird how the bug got me right away. Like I was bitten because it was just really cool. And I asked the guy behind the counter at the store, I said, how do you get into this as a career? And he pointed over at the shelf, and there was a book, an oversized book, like 11 by 17, called the Marvel Tryout Contest. So Marvel had put out a contest, and inside this book they had full-sized Bristol board pages and pages you could ink. I think they were drawn by John Romita Jr. Smaller pages you could color and letter. They had the whole thing in there. And they had a script, and you had to follow the script and draw it, and then you had to send it in by a certain deadline. And then they were going to choose who the best artist was in their view. Well, I didn't win, but Mark Bagley won it.
Oh,
yeah, Mark Bagley won the contest, and but I didn't win. But it made me even more determined to get in. So I kept at my samples. Then in the meantime, I found out that Mike Zeck, the artist on the book, on Secret Wars, turned out he lived 6 minutes from my house. So it was really very weird, serendipitous, I guess, coincidence, I guess. But I looked him up in the phone book, and sure enough, there he was, Mike Zeck on Lake Street, right down the road from me. It was really crazy. I mean, of all the places he could have lived in the world, he was down the road.
60 minutes from here.
6 minutes from home.
The only thing that would have been weirder is if he was in the apartment below me and I didn't know it. So that would have been really weird. Yeah. But anyway, so I called him up. I called him up and I left him a message on his answering machine. And I said, "Hey, I'm a guy who lives over here, down the road, and I was wondering if you could just look at my work and give me some pointers on what I would need to do to get to Marvel." And I didn't think he was going to call me back, but he did call me back, and he told me to send him some samples. And so I did, and then he called me back again, and we went over the samples, for half an hour or so, or maybe an hour, and told me what I needed to work on. And in the meantime, I told him that I was a bartender at this club down, in New Haven, and come on in, I'll buy you a drink, give you a free drink, whatever. And he showed up. So he started coming to my bar, and then he invited me to a convention to sit next to him at a table. And I was like, "What? Really? Sure." He seemed to think I was pretty good. And he did tell me later, he said the reason he, was invited me was because my samples didn't suck. He said they were actually pretty good, which was unusual for guys trying to get in the business, because a lot of guys get in, they weren't ready, or what have you. So that was nice to hear. Even though I had stuff to work on, he seemed to think I had a lot of potential. And so in the meantime, we were playing volleyball and going, and I was hanging out with him, and then one day, and I was still working on my samples, and one day he called me up and said, "Hey, Wednesday, I'm going into the city to Marvel. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so he brought me and this other guy named Larry Alexander into Marvel. And well, first we went to DC. We went to DC, and DC offered me a comic right away. They saw my samples, and they said, "Oh, do you want to draw Animal Man as a regular book?" So I'm like, "Yeah."
The Grant Morrison Animal Man.
Grant Morrison.
Speaking.
Grant Morrison, yep. And they said the only thing is you have to prove to us you can make a deadline. So do the first 8 pages and bring it in next week. So I did. I pulled all-nighters trying to get it done, and then I brought it in, and they loved it. But that week, the guy they originally offered it to, Chaz Truog, he had turned it down initially. That's when they asked me, but then he changed his mind that week and said, "Oh, I'll do it." So I went over to Marvel. In the meantime, I had gone to Marvel anyway that day when they offered me Animal Man. And by the time I got home, I had offers on my answering machine anyway. Even I had Animal Man, and then when I got home, somebody, Ralph Macchio, had called and offered me, I think it was Ralph Macchio. Or no, it was Bobby Chase. She called and offered me G.I. Joe to do a G.I. Joe issue. So I had all these offers. I was like really kind of overwhelmed right away because I'd never drawn a full comic before. There it is. Yeah.
The
very first comic book.
Ron, can I call you Ron, sir?
Of course, yeah.
G.I. Joe is very popular here in Argentina.
Oh.
The TV show was very popular, and also all the action figures too. And many comics came to Argentina. They were published here in Argentina. It's amazing. I love G.I. Joe. I love
it's funny you would say the action figures, because even that right there, that page you're looking at. When I did G.I. Joe, it was the first comic I ever drawn, and it was a wake-up call because they had the licenses from Hasbro.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure every vehicle was exactly
like it.
Yeah, and it was like, what, and I had to draw a whole comic book of it, and I had never drawn before, like a comic. I did some pages, I had samples, but I'd never done 22 pages like this. And so I was pulling all-nighters and trying to get that done, and you can see in there like all the vehicles and things. And
I was gonna tell you that something that amazed me. It was the accuracy on the vehicles, because
little
they
models.
were.
I had to sit there and draw it like this, if you look at the cover, the gun that he's holding is right, right from the action figure. So
you're working with Larry Hama too?
Yeah, it was with Larry Hama. Yeah, he was the first guy I ever worked with. Interestingly, yeah. And it's nice that you guys have that prepared like that. Yeah, that's really.
Yeah, we got
everything.
Everything. Okay. No naked pictures of me though.
No.
No, because it's very each character is very have many details on the armor, the weapons, the
numerous details.
Yeah.
I think that's the Saw Viper, right? Yeah, Saw Viper.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. That's great. Where did you find the page? You get it off of like in comic art?
Searching on internet, sir.
Yeah.
Researching for the interview.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
They published everything in TPBs or omnibus. G.I. Joe.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And this is issue 110, I think.
110. It was 110. So I did, working on that was, like I said, a wake-up call. During it, because of all that, I was like, oh my God. Because I went from being a nightclub guy and a bartender, and I was a manager of a club and being around, 500 people a night, having a social life, to being around just myself working. So I wasn't sure. It was a tough adjustment for me to go from being so social to being just by myself and isolated. That was I don't know if I ever got used to it completely, but I did it because I wanted the career and I wanted to succeed at it. So I was willing to make that sacrifice, obviously. But there was a period where I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I want to go on dates, out with chicks. What am I doing cooped up in a room? There was a point I remember where I was just working for like a year straight without ever coming out, except going to the gym. And then I remember waking up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, I got to go on a date or something, because I felt so isolated. But in the long run, I was willing to commit for the career, and work hard. So here we are talking to you guys.
And I think on your thoughts to doing dates, oh no, I'm dating Scarlett. Oh no, I'm dating Lady J. I remember on your work.
Yeah.
And after your first comic book, other offers, as you said, came, and you took some of the greatest Marvel heroes, and we got here some of your.
Well, yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I was getting myself into trouble because I was so like amazed that I was working for Marvel, because when you're younger or whatever, Marvel seemed like going to visit the Wizard of Oz or something.
Yeah.
Like it was, Marvel seemed like Emerald City to me in my mind. Like it was just Marvel, so to be actually working there was like amazing feeling. And so I didn't want to turn anything down because I was getting all kinds of offers right away. And so I didn't want to turn anything down because I didn't want to, want them to think, well, screw him, he doesn't want to do it, So I was taking on too much Like I did G.I. Joe, then I was offered Moon Knight, and that caused a problem with the editors because Bobby Chase, who asked me to do G.I. Joe, wanted me to do it regularly as a regular artist on G.I. Joe. But I didn't know that. So I agreed to, so I was offered the regular gig on Moon Knight. So I guess the two editors got in an argument over it. And so they had to pass a rule through Marvel not to check with all the other editors what they're planning on doing before they offer, so everybody's in sync. But it wasn't my fault. I didn't know she was going to offer me G.I. Joe. And I'm actually glad she didn't right away, because G.I. Joe was like the detail nightmare, and so going to
of course,
was a lot easier, so I was kind of glad it worked out that way.
Yeah. Moon Knight was more free to you, right?
Yeah, it was more free. It was a more popular character, really. I mean, for Marvel, say G.I. Joe's popular, obviously.
Yeah. But
that was more of a licensed thing where Moon Knight was created by Marvel, and it was fun. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I also got the chance to work with Tom Palmer. So that was a real trip for me, because I had been, when I got back into the comics, I was reading the Avengers quite a bit, and Tom was inking John Buscema on Avengers. And I couldn't believe how great Tom Palmer was. And then I ended up working with him. So it was all these dreams kind of coming true. And it was even more bizarre was back in the 70s, I remember reading a Gene Colan Dracula comic. And unbeknownst to me, Tom was the inker on it back then. But I remember this one scene in Dracula where Dracula bursts into a room and this guy is weightlifting. And Dracula says something to the guy, and the weightlifter throws the barbell at him, and it's like 200 pounds. And Dracula catches it with one hand and throws it back at the guy and knocks him through a wall, And I never forgot that page from reading that back in the 70s. So when I started working with Tom, I had forgotten all about that page. I mean, for the most part, about Dracula, and it didn't occur to me that it was Tom. But I said, "Oh, send me a bunch of your old stuff. I would love to see it." And that page was in there. The Dracula. So it was a goof. Here I am working with a guy who did that page that stuck out in my head. So everything kind of fast forwarded. It was like stepping into a time machine. So it was a real honor to work with Tom. God bless him. He just passed away. So it was tough to lose him, because he was a dear friend of mine, and I was honored to work with him. So that was a lot of fun. It was a learning experience getting to work with Tom. So
yes.
And for one of your first work, it was very good.
Yeah,
we can see here the ink and the pencils. Did you ink your pencils here?
Well, these are all Tom Palmer's inks.
Oh, Tom Palmer's inks.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Tom was very heavy. I mean, he's brilliant and stuff, and I learned so much working with him, and but over time, he was more of a finisher over breakdowns, and I was doing I was trying to do tighter and tighter pencils, and so eventually, I wanted to end up ultimately in the long run inking my own stuff, which I do now, but I didn't do that for many years.
Okay.
And so looking at the cover, and I am amazed do you work with Punisher, another fabulous character. Look at we have Moon Knight there, and also the Punisher.
Yeah, that was at the time wherever they put Wolverine or the Punisher on anything, the sales would jump up. So
yeah, and you also work on Ghost Rider.
Yeah,
and
I did Moon Knight. I went from
Night Stalkers,
Moon Knight to Night Stalkers, and then to Ghost Rider, and then from Ghost Rider to I think it was Captain America.
Look at this!
Oh, yeah.
Look at this!
These are
oh
God, that's crazy.
In your face, McFarlane.
All I see is all the things I could have done better.
It's amazing.
At that time, I also did Daredevil fill-ins, and I did a Morbius fill-in. I was working too much. And it was, I felt like I always liked that page, the one you just popped up there, actually.
It's
It's
a good one.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. What a goof.
And now you mentioned Captain America.
Captain
Now
America.
you got a chance to work with Mark Waid.
Mark Waid. Yes.
Mark Waid.
Mark Waid.
We met it with Kyle. We met him in Argentina.
We met him in person here in Argentina.
Yeah, in Argentina.
He came to a con,
Yeah.
and we had the chance to meet him.
Good.
He is such a nice person.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that run. It got cut too short. But I was really, when I got the offer to do Cap, see, my first samples were Captain America. That's what got me into Marvel, was Captain America samples.
Oh.
So then when I got offered Captain America, I was like, what? Hell yeah, I'll do Cap. Because he offered me Avengers, one other book, and then Captain America. And I said, I'll do Cap. I'll do Cap. And instantly I could see in my head how I wanted the whole book to look and feel. That logo up there with the shield coming across and that font, I designed that.
Oh.
The original, right before that, had that wonky sort of Captain America, like a semicircle with the star in it. But I came up with that whole logo and look. And I asked them if we could call it Steve Rogers Captain America instead of just Captain America. So that was all my idea. That's how strong the instinct in me was for that character.
Yeah.
So, and they let me do it, and the sales jumped up, and it was a great, great time to do that book. And then we got the rug pulled out from under us. There you go.
Super Cap.
And this Ron, the third one was the one that was used for the cover, or it's a commission?
Which one? The one in the middle?
The one in the
where he's opening his chest?
No, the
one. No, with Steve there.
Oh no. Oh yeah. No, that was original promo art.
Oh.
So when they asked me to do it, I hadn't drawn anything yet. So I kind of drew Steve Rogers, and I knew when I first talked to Mark Waid, he asked me what I'd like to do. And I said, honestly, I remember watching True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time. And I said,
we love it. We love it, that movie.
So I told Mark, I said, well, how about I would love it if he was sort of a secret agent. Like if Captain America had to go on a secret agent mission, like in True Lies. And then, it took him outside the country. And that's how Man Without a Country was born. Was based on that conversation I had with Mark, telling him it would be nice to make him sort of a secret agent, and then it all evolved from that. Yeah. And and that's where the bow tie comes in, and he's got the thing, because it's Steve Rogers, secret agent, like James Bondish kind of thing.
Yes,
now you mentioned
he's not a soldier anymore. He's not a soldier anymore.
Ron, now that you mentioned the True Lies inspiration, I watch.
You watch True Lies?
Steve Rogers, and it's Arnold.
Yes, it's Arnold.
It's Arnold.
Yeah. Well, that picture for sure. Yeah, he looks kind of like him, and that I was a big. I loved Arnold back then, and I loved that movie in particular, and I loved Captain America, and I just thought it would be an interesting fit that hadn't been done before, because it's like there's never been a story like that before where he becomes a secret agent and goes out of the country and goes on missions, and they were missions to maybe save America or, stop spies from infiltrating America. Why restrict it to just this superhero kind of thing where it could be, something more deeper and more, use that costume for a better reason, so because if he's nobody knows it's Steve Rogers underneath, it's one thing, but I wanted to see how the rest of the world saw Captain America, like what was their interpretation of him. And that actually led to the second time around when Mark wrote the Japan story when we came back to Captain America. It was what was Captain America's effect on the East, you know, on Japan and everything. And you saw it in that book, Captain America, big balloons, and you know, he was this big, you know, he was sort of, you know, Japan became westernized post World War II, and so we touched upon some of that, you know. So we were really going in directions that I felt Captain America needed, deeper directions, better directions. Like right before that, and God bless him, Mark Grunwald, he was a friend of mine, you know. But I think the last thing we saw was like Cap Wolf, where Cap turned into a werewolf, and that's not really the way you want to treat a character like that, you know. So that's where that all evolved from.
No, and they use everything of his story across all his time, and you put it in there.
Yeah. So what did we do? We did Man Without a Country, and then we did Operation Rebirth. I think that was the first one, was Operation Rebirth. So it was like the whole point of that was like bringing him back, and you know, the Red Skull, and making it like it used to be. You know, there was a lot of fun feel of Kirby in that stuff, you know.
Indeed.
Yeah, and my style had a very bouncy kind of style, like Jack's did, in the action and everything. So I just think the fans really connected with it right away. They were like starving for that old adventure, like Cap, you know. And I had a ball doing it. So, and I'm pretty sure Mark did, until we got it taken away. Then it was bizarre.
Yeah, it was because of Heroes Reborn. I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And you share the title with for a couple of issues with Andy Kubert.
When we came back, yeah, right. You're talking about when we came back.
Yeah, when we came.
Yes.
When you
that was not my doing.
Oh, okay.
I was not happy about that. I'm being perfectly honest. In fact, I really felt stabbed in the back by the whole thing, because, you know, I was on the book, you know, we got it taken away from us, right? And it went to Rob Liefeld. And so I was, you know, obviously Marvel called up, and, you know, I remember the editor-in-chief called me, and he's like, and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? I guess I'll just leave Marvel then. I mean, you know, and he's like, oh, you're going to punish us because of this? I'm like, how am I punishing you? You took the book away from me, you know? And so they offered me really anything I wanted to do. And I always wanted to draw the Silver Surfer. So while Rob Liefeld was drawing Captain America and Jim Lee was doing all the other stuff too, I was drawing Silver Surfer. And I love that character as well. And I did the same thing with that character that I did with Captain America, is I redesigned the logo, the font, and I made it a streaking font like the Silver Surfer, you know.
Yes.
So it's Silver Surfer. You know, it wasn't the rounded Silver Surfer. You know, you have to, in my opinion, you want the logo to reflect the feel of the character, you know. So I came up with the Silver Surfer, you know. And you know, the S's bled off the cover, you know.
And also you give your own touch to the character.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, honestly I loved Mobius, what he did. He did a book with Stan Lee, and I was so blown away by him. I always liked Mobius since I was a kid in the 70s. I remember reading heavy metal magazines and seeing Mobius's work, and I was always drawn to it. Like, who isn't? I mean, it's Mobius, so it's hard not to just stare at it and be just totally entranced by it. So when I did the Surfer, I loved the way he did it. So I wanted to play around deliberately for the first time with a deliberate style and try to infuse some of that just for fun into my work, you know, to try a little Mobius sort of riff on certain things. And yet come up with something that was unique to itself. And I feel like I made the Surfer look, my whole idea was to make him look really alien, you know, not quite so human, like sitting on the board emoting Shakespeare like Stan would have him, but more like, you know, just very cold and, you know, and different. You know, I mean, he's a different species from a different planet. He should feel somewhat alien. and his movements, even the way he flew on the board, he kind of just arms were down and he was just using his feet. He was kind of just, I wanted the board and him to feel like one thing where he wasn't really surfing. He was just sort of one with this board that was moving like this, and he could just stand on it. And so that's how I approached it. And it was also my idea to have him be able to absorb it into his body. And you saw a little bit of that in the movie, with the FF movie, where he kind of moltens through it. And he looks at the Human Torch from underneath and it comes back up. That was taken from the idea I had where he could absorb the board into his body. And so that had never been done before, I don't think. So, so I had a lot of ideas in that, and that was about 11 issues worth. And then they asked me to go back to Cap. So I was like, okay, well, it was going to be this huge deal because we're going to relaunch it at #1. And I was always hard for me to turn down #1 issues because of the money they made. It was like, I think it sold 500,000 copies, the first one. So, so same thing with Night Stalkers #1 sold a lot. That sold 250,000, I think, at that time. And so, I agreed to do it, and it was Cap. I still loved Cap, but the problem with it was the magic, the lightning in a bottle that my first run with Mark, it wasn't quite there the second time. And at that point, my art was evolving, and I was trying different things. And by the time I got back to doing Cap, I was struggling with getting back to what I had done before, because I had this whole thing in my head and then it got interrupted. And so had it not gotten interrupted, I would have really developed the look and feel over a long period of time where it was, but it got interrupted. So I went and did Surfer, and I was trying different styles, and also I became very good friends with Alex Ross during that time. And I started getting into his realism a little bit, looking at his work, and I wanted my figures to look more correct, and so I was really trying to develop as an artist. And so you saw that in the book. You saw an improvement in Caps in my anatomy and stuff, I think. But at the same time, I was trying different faces, and I was trying, so I was really experimenting a lot. So you saw it wasn't quite the same as it was the first time around. So,
that change, and that change of style, it's very we can see it on the, for example, in JLA, Pain of the Gods, and CDK Rules. Those were two jigs that were pretty good, and it has a very different style from the Captain America book.
I was always experimenting, because I guess, to confess, I guess I get bored easily. But but for me, it's an adventure. The art is an adventure. I don't like I get restless. I can't settle into one thing because I always want to just keep trying different things. And some guys get very comfortable in just creating their style, and they just develop that style to the nth degree, like Jim Lee or somebody, or Adam Hughes. But for me, I'm not that kind of personality. I'm more about the storytelling, for one, and two, for me, the storytelling is choosing camera shots and coming up with framing devices and composition. Like, I loved the way Orson Welles directed Citizen Kane. If you look at his panels, and and a lot of that influenced comic books, influenced Jack Kirby. You can see the way Orson Welles chose his shots in foreground and backgrounds, and and shadows, and and so I was more into that
the big rooms and everything. I love it.
Establishing shots and all these things. That was the fun for me, because I wanted to be into movies too. I wasn't as into being a style guy, where I just wasn't. So I think a lot of fans didn't connect with me right away because of that, because fans, they look at the art and they just want that instant gratification of going, wow, whereas I was more into the story and working with with the writer on creating a cinematic experience, throughout the pages. Like with Cap, I was developing a storytelling style where I was moving through the action with him, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I was jazzed about, was like watching, like I was really trying to make his figure move. I remember a scene where he was swinging around a tree branch, and I deliberately used the eye and the elements inside the panel to draw you into the next panel and then down. So you felt movement. And I think that's what people responded to my work over, not so much that, you know, a hot chick with big boobs standing there, or, you know, a muscular guy as much, you know, which is fine. I mean, I'm just saying that's not what I was into. I was into more of the other stuff. And then, yeah, so by the time Cap came back, I was on that for a few issues, but all of a sudden it was a hot character. You got to remember, when I came on it the first time, Cap was in the toilet. Nobody cared about him anymore. But then I came on with Mark, and it became popular again. And all of a sudden it became cool to want to draw Captain America. And so by the time it came back around, everybody wanted to draw Captain America, you know, because it became a popular character. And Jim Lee drew it, and Rob Liefeld did it. It was popular again. So you know how people are once they see, oh, it's popular, I want to go do it now. You know, if it was in the tank, the toilet still, nobody would have wanted to do it. So I knew Andy Kubert was sniffing around, and he had done Kazar.
We wait.
Kaiser.
Right, and I know they had a good working relationship, and you know, that's what happened. Is I'm pretty sure that Andy was a much hotter artist than I was. You know, he was on X-Men and all these things. So, you know, Marvel making that business decision just took me off it, and I had no say in it. And I felt that was a really crappy thing to do. You know, and I don't care what anybody says. I have my belief about who was involved in that decision. But it is what it is. I understand it was a business decision. I understand. It doesn't mean I had to like it, but I understood it because Andy was a hotter artist, and, you know, he had a bigger fan base. So, you know, they always wanted to get the sales up even higher. When I went on Surfer, they told me that the sales jumped 20,000 a month. So I can only imagine that if Andy was on a book, then it must have jumped even higher than that if they were willing to take me off it. So I understood it from a business point of view. And then they kind of gave me a consolation prize by asking me to do the second book, Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty, which I was supposed to co-plot with Mark, but it really wasn't much of a co-plotting situation. We did the same exact thing we did on Cap, which was just talk about the stories and what we would do. So, and then Mark would write. It was no different. So I got co-plotting credit, but it was just, it felt like a step down. I wanted the flagship title, you know, felt like I deserved it, but it wasn't to be. So after that, then Hulk came along. You know, I wasn't sort of, and then I got offered the Hulk, and I was like, what? Yes. Who doesn't want to draw a big green monster? You know? So that was my next book after that.
And how you end up working for DC after all this? Because you end up working in DC in the 2004.
Yeah, what happened was, so I did Hulk, and during the Hulk, which I love doing, I was working with John Byrne. I asked John Byrne if he wanted to do the Hulk with me, because
he's my favorite writer and artist. For me, he's God.
Yeah, John Byrne is one of the most creative people ever.
John Byrne.
He's another one that I had. It was a fun coincidence, sort of serendipitous thing to be working with him, because before I ever got into business, like 3 or 4 years before, I went to a seminar he was giving at a cartoon museum of art here in Connecticut, or Port Chester, New York, actually. And so I went to see him, and I remember like being so like starstruck by him. And I was standing looking at the art in the museum, and he was standing next to me, and I was like, oh my God. And I had this other guy's artwork named Sal Trapani, and I showed it to him, and he just goes, oh, that's very interesting. And he kind of just turned away. But I was like, you know, I couldn't believe it was John Byrne, you know. And so I asked him questions. And then come to be, I ended up coming down to parties at his house. I was invited to a couple parties at his house, and because he lived here in Connecticut. And
how was working with him in that run of the Hulk? Because then he do She-Hulk. It was another amazing thing he did.
It was interesting. I mean, I asked him to do it because he had done the Hulk, only like 8 issues of it years earlier. And I thought it was really cool what he had done, and I wanted to work with him. And so he agreed to do it, and then it fell apart, just became a disaster because some problems with him and the editor, and I was kind of caught in the middle. And I didn't know, I was like, But he got fired off of the Hulk because he wouldn't return the editor's phone calls. And so the editor fired him, and which was really, the whole thing was just crappy. And I didn't know what to do. I ended up staying on it. I probably should have just left with him because I think he was mad I didn't leave with him. But we still talked over the years. But I liked the direction he wanted to go in. It was more like the TV show where he's wandering around and encountering people. And it was just called Hulk, the Hulk, not the Incredible Hulk. So we changed it to that. But then, that kind of fell apart. And what also, some personal stuff in my life happened. And so I left the book, and then I was asked to do X-Men. But because of my personal life, things that were going on, I wasn't doing a good job. My heart wasn't into it. I was getting burnt out. I was getting tired of the politics from Marvel, going from one book to the next. It was like this problem and that problem, and Rob Liefeld and John Byrne and getting fired. And I was in the middle of it the whole time. And Andy Kubert's going to do it. And I'm off. And I'm like,
and secretly,
my career, I was really becoming really disenchanted with Marvel. Like the whole thing, I was just like, this is ridiculous. I didn't get into
What a shame, right? What a shame for you, because you're working with the greatest writers, artists, and happen these things during your work. It sucks. Sorry for my language. It sucks, right? Because
all these other guys, they were so, I learned a lot. A lot of the other artists were very cutthroat. They just, everybody was scrambling because it became big money. And Wizard magazine and the top 10, everybody had to be on the top 10 hottest artists. And if you weren't a top 10 hottest artist, people weren't even talking to each other at conventions. It was bad. I remember that Wizard magazine top 10 hottest artists list was causing a lot of the artists who were hot to treat other artists like crap, like they weren't worthy of talking to them at conventions. It was really bad.
That sucks, sir.
They had such egos about them. And I remember, I was on the top 10 list once or twice for Hulk. When I first did Hulk, I got on the list. I wasn't on it for Captain America. Who was Andy Kuber, because he was, he had a good relationship with them. And it was just the whole political engine of that really was tasteful. And so the reason why I was so happy when I got on the Hulk, because that's what I got into comics for. Just wanted to draw a big green monster and have fun. And I wanted to draw Cap and have fun. And yet all the business end of it and the backstabbing and the things were really bad. And, and I'm not bitter. It just was the reality of it. I'm not bitter about any of it because, I've had a great career. I managed to survive all of it. I managed to keep pushing through and saying, okay, well, now I'm going to do better on the next one. And I'm just going to keep moving and keep going at it and keep, you're not gonna kick me off books and think I'm gonna disappear. I just got better. I made a promise I would get better to myself. And so so then Hulk happened, and then X-Men happened, and then I wasn't really doing my best work on X-Men, and I was paired up with an inker who's a great inker, Mark Morales, but it wasn't a good marriage. He doesn't, there's certain inkers that look great on other guys and not as good. And Mark didn't look as good on me, and I wasn't doing my best work, so it wasn't fair to Mark. So it just was one of those things. I think Mark's a great inker. I've seen him brilliant on Lionel Yu and all these guys. But my stuff was very it's hard to ink. And in fairness to him and anybody else who inked me, and I got to work with Sal Buscema and all these great inkers, and Mark and Klaus Janson and Tom Palmer and Al Williamson, all these greats, you know. And Klaus looked really good on me. I always thought he had the most similar sensibilities to me, I think. So yeah, so X-Men came along, and then I knew I wasn't going to renew my contract with Marvel because I wasn't getting callbacks and stuff. So I knew something was up. But DC came calling, and they offered me Superman. Well, that's the other character in the business I never got to do that I always wanted to do, was that book as a title. I wanted to do Superman. And so I went for a meeting with Mike Carlin, and then he said, "Oh, you're not going to do Superman. You're going to do JLA." I'm like, "Oh no, I don't want to do a team book. I don't want to do
another
team book. No, please.
no.
Yeah, I went from X-Men to that. I'm just not good on team books. I'm better on single characters. I can make them my own." And I said, "Well, you just do some issues, the first bunch of issues, and then we'll get you see about moving over to Superman." I'm like, "Okay," So I went and did the JLA for 2 years, and I started out inking and penciling my own work because I needed to do that. Yeah, that's
syndicated roles.
Those are my inks. Yep. And yeah, that's crazy. Well, by this time, the one in the middle, excuse me, that was Dan Green. So I inked the first 6 or 7 issues was my inks, and then Dan Green came on. That's my inks. And then Dan Green came on after that, and I was working with Kurt Busiek at that point. So I did 14, I think, issues of JLA.
And also, you got tricked because you had to draw the whole JLA. Okay, I'm gonna draw all the JLA, but here's the syndicate.
Yeah.
Syndicate.
The double of characters.
Yeah, and then I got to do the alternate world versions of that. Yeah.
Oh.
And it's not that I like the story and all. It was just not my wheelhouse. I just didn't want to be doing all those characters at once. Because so my stuff I felt looked very maybe generic, because what makes my personality is I like to bring something special to each character. So if I were to do Superman, I would find something in the character that I could bring visually to him that would make him stand out, the way I did with Surfer, the way I did with Cap, and there's that Wonder Woman cover. I love that cover.
That Wonder Woman is
Wonder
awesome.
Woman is amazing.
Yeah, those are all my inks right there. Yep. Yeah. So, so yeah, I wasn't thrilled about being on JLA so much, and the deadlines were a pain, and I couldn't do all the work I really wanted to do, and my personal life stuff was still in flux, still some stuff going on. But then it started to mellow out, and things got better. And by the end of those 2 years, Marvel came calling again, and they offered me Spider-Man.
Spider-Man one of the best moments that it was.
Yeah,
Civil War.
And you can see the jump in my enthusiasm from JLA to that.
Yeah, of course. Two different guys. Guys.
Right? You see that it's all my personality coming through this stuff. By the time I was like, "What? Spider-Man? Yeah, I'll do Spider-Man." And so that was me coming back to Marvel. They offered me a contract, and it was great. It turned out really great. I was the first guy to draw the Iron Spider costume, and but you could definitely see the jump up in enthusiasm. So it was also at this time that I got offered to do work in movies. So I got a call from a guy who was working on I Am Legend with Will Smith, and so they told me they wanted to know if I could come in and meet the costume director, because he needed somebody to illustrate these zombies and these costumes they're wearing, and so he wanted somebody with a certain look. and somebody recommended me to him, so they asked me if I could come in. So here I am working on Spider-Man, and then I get offered to work on this movie. So I'm like, oh, but I couldn't turn it down. So I went into New York City, and I was working on that freaking movie and coming home and working on Spider-Man. I was like aging myself, exponentially aging, because I was like, And then I had my son was on the way. My wife was pregnant with my son. So that was nuts. I was going into the city every other day and then coming home and working on Spider-Man, and I was.
And Ron, how? I know it was a very busy job to do it, but how was working on that time on Spider-Man, because we had a big event there, that Civil War. So you did the Iron Spider and everything like that. So how was for you working on that kind of event?
I loved it because it was an event. It felt sort of socially important, the way, the message that was, it wasn't taking a stand either way, which I liked, but it was showing you the two sides, Tony Stark's versus Captain America's side, which they did in the movies too. But, and then all the heroes having to register, and it was a good story, a very deep story that these characters deserved, instead of fluff stuff like, we have seen in some stories. I won't mention any particular ones.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So, the characters were being treated with the respect they deserved, and that's what I liked about it. And so, I had a good time on that, and it was Spider-Man, and I was, again, I was growing quite a bit, and then working with the guy in New York City on the movie, I was having to sit there and illustrate these costumes. It was different because he would be over my shoulder looking at what I was doing, and he would tell me, oh, well, can you do this? And it was weird. All of a sudden having somebody give me a critique right there about the work. And so my stuff started getting better and better, because I had instant reaction, and he was spotting things that would take me days to spot that he would spot instantly. So this because he was a very experienced costume director. He worked on Blade Runner, and he worked on the Sonny and Cher show, and back in the 70s. He worked on all these things. His name was Michael Kaplan, and he was really great. So it was a big jump for me, and a great time to work on that book, and it was a huge success. So anytime it's a success, it's
also, Ron, it was like a full circle for you, because you got to draw the Black Suit Spider-Man that was created by Mike Sick, your mentor.
Yeah, that's right. Back in Black.
Love that arc. I really love that arc, and it's one of my favorites.
I came up with the story where he beats the crap out of the Kingpin.
Oh,
that was my story. I wrote the editor. I wrote a whole full page email about that story, saying this is what I would love to do, even if it was in a separate comic book. So I told him, I said, what if the Kingpin's in prison? He's in prison, and the Spider-Man comes in and just beats the crap out of him because of what he did to Anthony. And so I said, because I never bought into the idea that the Kingpin could hold his own against Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man. The Kingpin would get mopped the floor with, by Spider-Man. If Spider-Man was pissed off at him, he could kill him instantly. And so I never really liked the idea that Kingpin was always fighting these guys like Daredevil. Daredevil I could see a little more because it wasn't as super powered as Spider-Man, but not Spider-Man. And so I came up with that idea, and then I thought, well, maybe, and maybe it would kill the Kingpin's reputation because he gets the crap beat out of him in front of all the
look at that.
There you go. There he is. Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This thing
the last one on the right, it's a variant or it's an used cover?
No, that was a commission.
It was a commission.
Yeah, somebody asked me. Well, actually, yeah, they asked me to do that, and it wasn't the way they wanted it, but it came out great, so they bought it anyway. And then I did another one for them after that. But I guess it was a different idea they wanted, but that's what I saw in my head, and it came out really good. So looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank God they published this stuff to here in Argentina, so we can get it.
I will get to another Back in Black that was with Daredevil.
Yep, with Daredevil Back in Black. Yeah, that one was my favorite art I've ever done in a comic. For some reason, something clicked with me, and I was on another planet mentally with this book. I just was doing the best work of my career for whatever reason.
It has some Miller vibes here,
Everybody says that, but if you saw my Men of Wrath stuff, and I was experimenting, I've always liked, like, Miller has his influences too, and a lot of his influences are my influences, like Prince Valiant, for instance.
Yes.
Hal Foster, and if you look at some of those old greats, I mean, they played around with a lot of the white and black, and then there's Alex Toth and Alec Raymond, and all those guys played around with those guys. Alex Toth in particular.
Oh,
lots of black silhouettes in the foreground, and and so really, and Miller, obviously, I love Miller. Who doesn't? So all that stuff was just starting to come through. If you put my stuff right next to it, you wouldn't say that, but the feel of it is there.
You said Alex Toth. Yeah, it's really Alex Toth. Something with the shadows, with the blacks, with everything. Because we they published here in Argentina Zorro.
That was
Zorro from Alex. It's huge, and it's very big, like an album.
Right.
Of Zorro.
He was a huge influence on me.
Huge.
Him and John Buscema and Kirby and Miller's in there. Obviously, even John Romita Jr.'s in there. There's artists I'm always taking inspiration from, even guys who haven't been in the business as long as I have. I'm always inspired by things people come up with, So during that run, that was just all coming through like a freaking, I was just channeling it all. And it came up with, it was using white strokes in a certain way that nobody had done. And, and then you couple that with the Miller look, and I think it came up with a really interesting look. So, and I did Men of Wrath, the creator own. I was doing it on that too.
Oh,
nice. Yep.
Nice.
It's amazing.
Actually, the one on the right where he's swinging, I had Michael Golden in my head a little bit. I think a little bit of Michael Golden in there, but yeah.
You really have fun with this demo.
The one on the left had Mazzucchelli in my head.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
David Mazzucchelli was definitely influenced the first one more than Miller. Was Mazzucchelli on that? I love the way the form looks, and the receding angle of it with his legs and just coming forward. I try to make him arc, like you see it in perspective, but his body's also arcing downward at the same time. I tried to do a combination of both, and I think it worked out well. Yeah,
it's awesome, and it's amazing the architecture of the building.
Hi guys, sorry I'm not paying attention to your names. Hi Xavi, Robert,
we have a message here. Amazing work in Silver Surfer. Love the Mobius reference art.
Thank you, Emmy. Appreciate that.
Here freaking site said that the run from Captain America here in Argentina, we all met that Captain America thanks to your work, sir.
Oh wow, that's great.
That's freaking site said.
Amazing.
And we got to go where
you've been waiting to go.
Here Kai has been waiting.
The fun moment
since we begin the transmission. That is how you got into this chick, Ron? How you got into Berserker with Matt
how did,
and
how did it
Keanu
happen
Reeves?
for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. So I was finishing up Juggernaut, and it was the last thing I did for Marvel was Juggernaut, and maybe a cover, a Wolverine cover or something. But it was during COVID, and I at this point was feeling like I wanted to move on and maybe do something of my own, create our own or something. I just felt like I was getting tired of drawing other people's stories. I wanted to draw my own stories. So I wasn't, and I don't know if Marvel was even planning on offering me a contract, but I wasn't planning on signing one. So I knew it had reached its end. I had been with Marvel for over 30 years at that point, 33 years or something, and DC for 2 of those. But so I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But anyways, I get this phone call or an email from the editor. I think it was Eric Harburn over at Boom Studios. Say, hey, can I talk to you on the phone about something? And I'm like, I figured it was going to be cover work or something like that. I'm like, yeah, sure. So he calls me up and he tells me, he's like, we're wondering what your availability is because we're doing this book with Keanu Reeves. I'm like, okay, Keanu Reeves, obviously the big movie star. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and they said, well, and he really loves your work. I'm like, get the hell out of here. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Right.
So I thought they were just bullshitting me and that they were just branding. He was like, Keanu was probably just branding something, like, putting his name on it, but he wasn't going to be really involved in it. So I kind of said no at first. I said, I don't know. I said, I didn't hear that from him. Oh, he loves my work. I didn't hear him tell me that, I said. And they're like, well, can we at least talk to you some more about the project and this and that? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll listen to what you have to say. But I had every intention of turning it down, That is until the day came where I pressed the Zoom meeting button. Bling and boink, there's Keanu staring at me. I'm like, hey, I know you. And he goes, Ron.
Whoa, dude.
Ron, dude.
I love your work. I want to work with you. It wasn't quite like that, but something along those lines. But, it was him and Matt Kent was there. And I think the editor. And so just they started laying out to me, and talking to me. And I told them, look, Keanu said something to me like he spent the whole weekend looking at my work, and it was tripping me out. I was like, it was very weird at first, like very just bizarre. Like I'm like looking around, like, is there a camera on me somewhere? Is this camera? Like Keanu Reeves is talking to me through my computer. Like it was very weird. But we got along very well, and I was joking around with him, and he said something like, do you mind if I offer criticisms about the work? If I want to move a character here to the left or the right, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and then he said, or should I just fuck off? And I said, yeah, you should just fuck off. And I just waited. And everybody got uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, of course. I'm joking. Of course you can offer me criticism,
Yeah.
And then I was teasing him about that during that. Said something about, oh, Keanu's going to want me to redraw like 20 pages. And he puts his head down. I'm just joking. So that's how the conversation was going. And then we were laughing and, and so it was actually very relaxed right from the get-go with him and I. And so I clicked off. He said, listen, he said, he goes, I want you. He said, I want to work with you. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll let you know. And I get off the phone and I'm like, what the hell was that? I'm like, well, how am I going to turn that guy down? How am I going to turn down Keanu Reeves? Okay, I guess I'm in, but I knew it was going to be a huge undertaking because they had already been working on it for a while, I guess, and they even had another artist draw the first issue, but that didn't work out. And I didn't know anything about any of this, but it had been going on for like a year or something, so I didn't know anything about it. And then, so I wanted to take some time off before I started, but they were already asking me for some promo art, and I'm like, oh,
No.
I wanted some time off, you know what? I just said, you know what? Screw it. You know, after about 2.5 weeks, I said, I'm ready. I'm just going to get right into this, and I'm going to kick its ass, and I'm just going to sit down and kill it, you know, and I did.
You did.
40,
You did it. You actually did.
44 pages, and I was working. It was a great time because it was so different, a bolt from the blue, you know, just came from out of nowhere, you know, all of a sudden this wonderful thing happened for my career, which was, you know, sort of out of nowhere. And it was interesting too, another bit of coincidences, because Keanu knows some of the same people I do through my jujitsu. Yeah, there's a guy. It's funny because I'm friends with this guy who I actually competed in a tournament, jiu-jitsu tournament against. He beat me, but he's a world champion. I just went into it for fun, and I lasted 6 minutes, but he beat me, you know. And but we became really good friends. And his name is Gay Cobham, and so he texts me and he said, when it was announced that I was working with Keanu, he texted me. He says, "Oh, tell Kiki I said hello." And turns out that he owns the security guard agency that Keanu would hire bodyguards from for John Wick. So this guy I competed against knows Keanu because he had his bodyguards protect him for John.
Such a small world.
It was like this strange, like, again, this whole thing. Like,
yeah, 6 minutes from your home.
Yeah.
6 minutes on the mat, 6, you know, everything. Hopefully, there's no other 6 in there because that would be bad luck.
Yeah.
So, 3 6s. Oh God, no. So anyway, yeah. So that was interesting, and then turns out a guy I used to train with 20 years ago teaches his stunt guys judo for stunts and stuff. So it was all this interesting little things. He's into music. I'm into music. We both love motorcycles, you know. So, and he owns a motorcycle company. So it was good right from the get-go. And then, you know, so I got into it, and yeah, that's how it started.
And how was designing the B or the Unute
I was
character?
designing him.
Yeah.
Well, Keanu wanted, you know, I asked him right away, like, you know, do you want this character to look like you? And obviously, you know, because they were thinking maybe it could be a movie, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't want to do that precisely, you know, like a lot of the covers and things I see, they're obviously using photo reference for Keanu, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just look. When I would talk to him, because we would Skype here and there, just, you know, just to talk, and if we wanted something from each other, I would just study his face and look at his face and let my memory absorb it. And I never used a photo reference for him. So, because I wanted my memory of him to filter through my own brain. So when I drew the character became B and not Keanu Reeves.
Not Keanu, right?
I didn't want it to be Keanu on paper. I wanted it to be Berserker on paper, right? So I wanted there to be just enough of a difference that looked like Keanu, but looked like its own character too. And that's sort of what an actor does. It's like they try to convince you that it's not the actor, that they're this character. So it's my job to visually do that, you know. So I just let it filter through me, and I, you know, use the basic look of Keanu, who has a very symmetrical face, and I would let it just come through, you know. Even this, like this cover here,
Oh,
you know,
Yeah.
it's not
Yes.
Keanu, but it is, you know.
Yeah.
yes.
So it's Berserker, but it resembles piano, but it's also, you know, not. It's like its own character. So, you know, and that was influenced by the Shroud of Turin. I don't know if you know what the Shroud of Turin is. It's this cloth they found that looked like it had Jesus's face superimposed over it.
Oh yeah.
So that's what that influenced me for that cover, was the Shroud of Turin. Like imagine if it was actually B instead. It wasn't Jesus, it was B. You know, so I had that in my head when I did it. And
I'm translating. Es el Santo Sudario.
El Santo Sudario.
Yeah. Yep. So I always thought it was an interesting idea that they got it wrong, that it wasn't Jesus at all. It was just Berserker because of his power. It just burned into the cloth, you know, too, as well. Anyway, so that's what influenced that. And so drawing him was, you know, got easier and easier as it went along, because the character was sort of creating itself. You know, the more I just kept drawing it, you know. And there are moments where, let's see, I don't have the first issue, but there are moments where on the smaller faces, it looks exactly like Keanu. Like, yes, you can't tell the difference. But that's just because my brain was filtering and it just happened to come out just looking.
Wait a minute. I'm going to search one.
There's one where he's standing over a bunch of soldiers in the first issue, where the panel after he helicopters down onto the top of the building. And then he's just standing there, and it's a smaller shot of his face, and it looks exactly like Keanu. And some of the panels after that.
Not this one.
Not that one, no. That's more like the Terminator.
The first issue is frenetic.
The first issue, yeah.
The first issue is very, very
my hair.
Easy to read, and I read it like in 10 minutes. It was incredible. It was incredible.
Well, it was certainly.
It's a kind of Morbius right here, right? Kind of Morbius.
Morbius-ish, yeah. I thought the same thing. It wasn't meant to be, but it did look like that.
No.
And we have here some of your art from your the one in the middle is one that it's gonna come out right now in United States.
Yeah, that one was originally done as a little poster for the Kickstarter. And it was part of a deal that they were getting a copy of it signed. So that was that wasn't a cover right away, but it's now going to be the cover because they're reproducing my first issue in black and white. And that's going to be the cover. That's going to be the cover for it. Because the black and white looks really cool, you know.
Yeah.
So
and the one in the left, in the right, it's the banner that you have on your back.
Yeah, behind your back.
That came out really nice. I really love the way I colored that one. Too.
That's awesome. That's
awesome. I penciled, inked, and colored that.
I can put it here behind.
And can you tell me this? You did it on purpose.
Yeah, that one. Well, I honestly, Keanu even talked about that on TV. Here on what was it? It was Jimmy Kimmel or something. It was on Jimmy Kimmel, and they brought that up. And I didn't know about this whole subculture of Keanu fans that, you know, pay attention to every little thing he does, like sitting on a bench. It's interesting with him because he's so loved by the populace, you know. And so people were projecting onto him that he was very sad. So they call it the sad Keanu picture.
Sad Keanu meme. It was a meme.
Keanu meme. And turned into this big thing. And he was just eating a sandwich, I guess.
Yes.
The guy was just eating.
Turns into this big thing, you know. It's like Captain Kirk, you know, when he talks about Star Trek. It's just a TV show.
Yeah, Shatner says that.
You've turned this enjoyable little job I did as a lark 20 years ago into a colossal waste of time. Anyway, so they project that onto Keanu, like, you must be sad, poor Keanu, you know. And so they wanted to do a little bit about that in the opening of the book. So that's where that came from.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We have a picture here of the Comic Con. This was the 2020 and 20.
Last year.
22.
22.
Yep. That was a lot of fun. We had a blast.
It was the first one out of pandemics.
Yeah. So we came out. I actually flew out to California and came back in one day. Like, Keanu actually flew me out there because they were, you know, he was going to make an appearance there, and he called me up and wanted to know if I, you know, I'm like, well, I feel like Matt and I should be there, you know, and so it worked out. Flew out there. We had a great time. There was 7,000 people in that room. It was amazing. One of the best times of my life. It was great.
And the first issues sold out like 600,000 units.
Over 600,000. It was like 630 or something. And then kept selling after that, you know, with the additional reprints and everything else. So it was the biggest one in a long time. Like, comics hadn't sold that much in like 30. I think Star Wars sold a lot. But as far as like a hero comic kind of thing, that was it. Gracias, Mr. Ron Garney.
Yeah, and we're gonna end the interview here, thanking you for your time, for your consideration, for telling us about your career, the behind the scenes, something that we really appreciate here as a comic book fan.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you guys as fans, I mean, I just came back from a convention in North Carolina, and I always tell people one of the reasons I like to do conventions is to meet you guys, you know, meet fans and meet people, because it's your enthusiasm and your positive energy that makes it worthwhile. So, I mean, I'm honestly glad you connect with my work. I feel very honored by that, because I mean, it's like, it's a rare thing, you know, and to have that given back to me in your enthusiasm, it's both are equally important. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So you are just as much a part of these things as I am. So
now, thanks to you, sir, because you are the as always said when I say goodbye to the artists and the writers, that you are the real heroes, because with your work you entertain us and pulls out from this world.
Well, thank you.
And read this. So thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you so much.
And we got a lot of greetings here from Chile, from Argentina.
Yeah, aquí en Chile llegaron algunos números de ellos de la medianoche.
Midnight Suns.
Medianoche. Is that right? Medianoche?
Yes, medianoche.
Y ahí fue la primera vez que vi el gran trabajo de Ron Garney. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Después, I can't see with my glasses.
En varios
números del Centinela de la Libertad.
Yeah.
Números del Centinela de la Sentinel.
Yeah, the ones of the Captain America.
Captain America.
I just love reading this stuff in your language. Un gran salado.
Yeah, people are
Arenas.
Yes, this is from Chile.
People, I really have fun with these interviews and love them because of the chance that we got to meet people like you, sir. That it would, if it couldn't be through technology like this, through streaming, we couldn't meet you and other comic book creators as we did. We today with you we hit the 40 guest mark.
Yes, well,
You're the 40th.
So
I was the first. Get out of here.
The first one was one of a friend of yours. It was Jerry Orway.
Oh, Jerry. He was the first one. How do you know we were friends? We know each other.
Because I read in some of the some articles that you two got along. I think you two work on a book or something.
Yeah, we worked on Hulk, actually.
Hulk.
Yeah, on the Hulk. And then he that was a mess though, because Eric Larson wanted to be the writer, and then Jerry wanted to be the writer, and then again it was all this stuff going on in the transition. But I used to hang out with Jerry and Mike Zeck together. Like we would go to dinners a lot, way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I lost touch with him over the years, but once in a while I'll run into him here and there. But it's been a while. I mean, maybe I've seen him once in a decade. So, but yeah, he's a great guy. Very intelligent. And yeah. Yep.
And you should come here to Argentina, because we're going to expect you, sir, because we love your work.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. I would love to come there.
We're waiting with you with a great barbecue. So
barbecue. Oh, I love barbecue.
Yeah. Barbecue.
You can come
here in Argentina is a good barbecue.
Well, just have somebody contact me, and we'll work out the details. Get me out there.
Yeah, of course.
But somebody just needs to contact me. I'll come out.
Okay.
Of course, sir.
Make it.
Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for being so kind with us and answer all our questions as a fan. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you, all you guys. Frickin' Side, Emmy, Fernando, Christopher, Santiago, Foster Robot Kill. All you guys. All right. Take it easy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Y ahora vamos a despedirnos. En español. Nada, gente, ya saben, ven que logramos tener a Ron Garney acá contándonos cómo se codeaba con Keanu Reeves.
Con
la cosa. Mike Zeck vivía a 10 cuadras de la casa de él. Una cosa espectacular. La verdad que agradezco a todos los que estuvieron ahí. Sí. Seguramente en 2 o 3 días van a tener subtitulado la entrevista, y como les dije al inicio, les voy a poner acá arriba la tarjeta para que ustedes puedan verlo subtitulado, ya sea en el celular o en la computadora. Nada, muchísimas gracias a vos, Mario, por estar acá, por apoyar desde el inicio, y felicitaciones también por los 40 programas de Protagonista del Cómic, porque como yo digo, Protagonista del Cómic es un programa que creé yo, pero Mario también es parte importante de él, porque es el que tuvo desde el inicio, como siempre digo, el que se levantó, el que levantó el teléfono.
11 de la noche. Estaba. Y estuvimos. Y bueno, y aparte, Kyle, tenemos que decir algo. Esto va para rato todavía nos quedan un montón de gente.
Sí. Nosotros, yo lo que digo es, gente, dejen su like, compártanla, mírenla, apoyen este contenido, porque nosotros vamos a seguir haciendo entrevistas.
Un montón.
Yo sé que, por ejemplo, este es un contenido que no tiene muchas visualizaciones y que no tiene mucha salida, pero apóyenlo porque realmente cuesta un montón hacer este contenido, cuesta un montón conseguir a los invitados, cuesta un montón coordinar todos para que podamos hacer las entrevistas, así que nada.
Y no saben la cantidad de cosas que tenemos ahí en carpeta posta preparadas para hacer en protagonistas del cómic. No lo podemos decir porque no queremos spoilear nada, pero la verdad que, en serio, lo único que les decimos es que dejen su like y apoyen este programa, porque la verdad, este programa vale la pena en todo, porque no se van a imaginar lo que se viene. Así que síganle dando like, compartan y activen siempre los subtítulos, que Kyle siempre dejaste un video instructivo también, acordate.
Hice instructivo de todo para que puedan disfrutar de las entrevistas. Acuérdense de suscribirse, de activar la campanita, de seguir el canal de Mario Justicieros, que el día de ayer estuvimos haciendo todas las novedades de historieta argentina,
y que vamos
en el
a
canal de él, en
más.
Viñetas Argentas. Vayan a verlo, denle el apoyo y nos estamos viendo en el próximo video, reseña, entrevista o lo que sea, acá en Cairo Reviews, donde vivimos
los cómics, Mario. Señores. Vivimos los cómics.
Vivimos los cómics. Hasta luego.
Chao.